All right, everybody, we are live today with an interview show for the Living Free in Tennessee podcast, and I've got Louise Milleman here. Say hi to everybody.
Hi, how's it going?
Going great. You're from Forgotten Ways PMA, aren't you?
I sure am. Let's see.
Well,
Right here.
let's start there. Who is Louise and what is this Forgotten Ways PMA? What is a PMA? Why does somebody want to be part of one or start one?
Love it. Awesome. Well, hi everyone. I am Louise. And I'm so excited to be here. Absolutely love everything that Nicole is doing. So it's such an honor to be on here. So a PMA is a private ministry association, or you can call it a private membership association. But we are actually running a ministry out here, which is a 508c1a. And one of the reasons that you might want to start a PMA is really just for a little bit more protection. You know, it's not like a full protection of anything from the government or anything like that, but it's layers of protection. And when you operate under a ministry or under a private membership association, then you're able to take what would be considered working in the public domain and bring it into the private domain. And when you're in the private domain, you have a lot more protection, and you have a lot less government interference, and you have a lot more that you can just do freely. So we decided that we were going to go ahead and operate out here on our land as a ministry so that we can we're going to do what we're going to do anyways, but at least we feel like we can do what we're going to do with a little bit more peace of mind, knowing that we're doing it. Mm-hmm. We're operating everything. We're operating in the private domain. So really we can do it without, I guess, worrying about as much as we would need to worry about if we weren't operating in the private.
And why does the membership or ministry add an extra layer of protection? Like, what's the thinking behind that? Because I'm sure you did a bunch of research, and guys, this is not business legal advice, but I'm wondering what her thought process was. And do know that these things alter state to state. So you're in Georgia, you did this research for Georgia and made the decision there. But what were you thinking about to decide ministry versus membership and to have an association at all?
Right. Well, I guess for us too, a lot of it was business purposes, because if you look at the 508c1a, you are tax exempt. And that's one of the reasons that we chose to go under a ministry instead of having like all these like exceptions. Was just we are a tax exception. So we don't have to pay taxes at all as a ministry. So that was one of the reasons that we decided to do it, because like taxation is theft, right? I'm not trying to give the government, there's so many more things that we could do better with our money than give to the freaking government, especially when we don't agree with anything that they do, right? And so that's why we chose to do the ministry versus just a membership, which really, again, it's just more about operating everything that we're doing out here. We're operating in the private domain. So some of the things that we're offering out here through our ministry is going to be things like we have a butcher experience. That's what we're calling it. We don't really have a full name for it yet, but anybody that wants to. Anyone who wants to come out here, and instead of just coming in like buying pork from us or buying a whole from us or buying a half or buying anything like that, it's like we're doing like an experience, right? So you're going to come out here and you're going to do everything on your own, as far as you're going to harvest that animal, take the shot, you're going to dress it, you're going to butcher it, package it, bag it up yourself. And like if we were operating in the private domain, we'd have to have all kinds of approvals to be able to do that. They'd probably have to come like inspect our space to make sure that it was like clean, or like whatever they have to come and do. And I get why they do it for some things. I get why they, have some of these regulations in place, but also like we just want to operate in the private, right? We just want to have a few people over, everybody's taking minds of, doing what they would do, cleanliness at their own home or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want the government all up in here trying to inspect our space and see what we're doing. And I don't even really want them to know what we're doing, because it doesn't freaking matter. Why should they? Right. So I don't have to go and report to them like, this is what I'm offering and this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm selling. It's like, no, like everything is done through private membership agreements. So if you come out here and you want to participate in our butcher experience and you sign a contract saying, hey, you're understanding that you're coming into a ministry and that, everything that's happening is here is under this private membership agreement that you're agreeing to, and everything is just contracts. It's all contracts through the people. So a member of my ministry, we'd be contracted. We're not contracting with the government. We're not operating in that domain anymore. So we're just private.
Okay. And I think that's similar to what Neethi Bali does with her food church. It's the same idea, where she has established a PMA in North Carolina. It operates in the state. I don't think she goes over state borders with it. And in that way, members come and participate in the butchering of the cows and the packaging of the cows, and then members can have a share of the cow, and it gets the USDA out of the freezers, basically.
Right. Exactly. We want all those guys out of our business as much as we possibly can.
Right. So what inspired you? Like, what made you come to this idea that you would do that? Did you see it somewhere, or was it just through your own research?
Yeah. So back when I lived in California, by the way, we're not from California. Just want to make sure everyone knows that.
That's okay. You can be from California and we can still love you.
Okay, good. Lots of people in Tennessee are like, you're from California.
I have people apologize on my show from where they're from and what religion they are. And I'm like, literally, we welcome everybody who is interested in freedom. It doesn't matter.
Yes, all the people that are leaving are the ones that are like, something is right over there, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, back when we lived in California, I hosted I had a business there. It was not a PMA. It was just a regular traditional business. And it was also the chapter president of the Holistic Chamber of Commerce in Roseville, Rockland, California. And through that, when all this stuff started going on with this crazy pandemic that happened, and everyone's shutting down, and California was like super crazy, everyone's masked up, everyone's not allowed to do whatever they were being told not to do. And so I decided to host a seminar. It was called COVID Concerns, a holistic health symposium. And so I brought in a few people that were there to speak about, there was one doctor that was there that was talking about like all the concerns he had about what was going on. He was actually fired because he wouldn't put on his mask, and he was a doctor and he refused. And so they fired him. So he went and opened his own private practice, and his practice exploded, by the way. And everyone was like, we want him. And then I had somebody come in about how to organize rallies, like if you really want to do like protests and stuff. And so there was a few different people that I pulled in to do this event. And one of the people that came in to talk was about businesses and how to operate PMA during COVID, and how to get into the private domain, and how you had so much more freedom and so much more, and I'm sitting here listening to this lady. Like, I brought her in as one of the speakers, but even when I brought her in, I didn't really know exactly what she was going to talk about. Like, she kind of gave me like this brief overview, and I was like, yeah, cool. You sound like a good fit. Come on in. You're in.
Yeah.
I needed one more spot to fill. I needed 4 speakers. Yeah. And I'm listening to her talk, and I'm like, wow, this sounds like something I want to do, and that it probably took another like 2 years before we were actually up and running. Because what ended up happening was I started going through all of this stuff where I started researching about it. It's really confusing. And even with the way I describe it, I'm probably not even saying everything 100% right, because I have this whole like bylaws. I have this whole binder because I had somebody set this up for me. I didn't do it myself. You can do it yourself, but if you are setting yourself up as a ministry, you have to be very careful with the way you word things, just in case something does happen and you end up finding yourself in freaking court or something ridiculous, which we're just not going to manifest that. So I won't even say it. But just in case you want to set it up, you want to make sure that you're like a legit ministry, right? So we, I went and did all this research on different stuff, and it was really confusing. And so when I'm confused, an overwhelmed mind doesn't make decisions. At least mine doesn't. So I can't do this. And then I finally found somebody. Her name is Brooke. And she works with a partner named Jess, and they both were able to break it down to me where I understood it enough to where I was able to make a decision with working with them. I think the fee was like right around $1,000 or something like that.
Cheap.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. Well, actually,
I was thinking it was going to be $5.
No, it was actually, and I got so it was more than 1,000 for me, but I think they have a package that you can get in, like the lowest package is like 1,000, but we ended up getting a trust. So we have a trust, not an incorporated trust. And then we have our ministry under our trust. And then we had some other protections in there as well. And I think ours was like maybe 1,700 because we had
that's still like, that's really cheap. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was. They're really, really reasonably priced, and they write all the bylaws. We have a contract in there that they came up with, and they give us like 6 months worth of support if we need extra questions or help, or, how to set things up within the banking systems and all that stuff, so there's a whole lot to it. But when I found people that could break it down to me where I was like, this is not confusing anymore. I mean, it's still a little bit confusing, but enough for me to understand. I felt comfortable working with them. I was like, hired.
Well, and I think that's really important. If you go to a CPA or a tax attorney or a business attorney and they can't take the law and make it clear to you about the why, then they may not really understand. That's what's happening. Or they are setting up a situation where the information is siloed that can set you up for a failure because you didn't really get it. And so like the worst thing that happens is you track expenses wrong because you don't understand what they were asking you to do. And then you get audited and then you're screwed or you're fined or whatever. Right. So
Right.
I think it's really important for anybody you're working with to help break it down. I've actually really I've been going through something where I've been working with somebody I've worked with before who is a better marketer than I am. And that's, I mean, I'm not the best marketer in the world. So that's not like, wow, they're a better marketer, but they are. And so I have had a lot of text message conversations with this person just about like, what are we doing next? What's the hook? And sometimes clarifying things. And I have found it really great to work with this person because he takes the time to say, like, here's what I'm thinking, here's why I'm thinking it. And then from there, I'm able to execute a lot better. And what you will see is by October Self-Reliance Festival, it's a totally different marketing system for the event. Right now, there are elements that we've built in, but the timeline is short enough that you don't want to scrap everything and go back to the drawing board.
Right.
But where it's going long term is super exciting, and I understand the why. I've learned some new things, and I'm excited about that. And I think it's just really great when you find somebody who can do that with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like for me, it helps you, it like compresses your time, right? Because it's like you can all do whatever you want to do on your own. You can go figure out how to market yourself better if you wanted to, or you can just work with somebody who knows how to do it. And then boom, even if you have to pay them, or even if you trade with them, or even if you whatever, like you're saving yourself so much time, and time is our most valuable asset. So
yeah. Well, and what I've realized is I'm really good at some things. And I'm good at some things and I'm bad at things. I am good at marketing. I'm really good at presenting and teaching, right? So I can build marketing to really good, or I can work with people who are already really good and I can focus on that other public speaking and teaching piece, which I think does better for the network around me than me becoming a better marketer.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I love that.
So anyway, I want to take a minute to say hi to those of you who have shouted out in the live stream. Pack Rat, Martinson family, Homestead Glamour Girl. I'm going to see you in 2 weeks. Life Done Free. Going to see you in 2 weeks. I'm probably seeing Pack Rat in 2 weeks. Arthur, welcome. If you guys have questions, put them in all caps. Now, our topic for today, Louise, was off-grid living and your journey to off-grid living. And I sort of jumped straight into the private ministry association, which I thought was membership when you called it a PMA. So I learned something different about how you're structured, which is cool. But how does that ministry relate to your decision to go off grid?
Well, I mean, I guess really what we're trying to do out here with Forgotten Ways, the whole reason that we're called Forgotten Ways Ministry is because we want to take a step back, right, into the forgotten ways of the past, because that's what we truly believe is going to be the best thing for us to be able to protect our future. We have to step back because the direction that we're going right now, if we keep moving forward, is not working. It's crumbling around us. And maybe it's designed perfectly. Maybe it's exactly what they want. That's what I feel, so for them, it's designed and it's working exactly how they want it to work. But for us that want to stand up and resist this, change that's coming, it's not working. It's falling apart. And so it's all I can see is the best way for us to protect that is just to go backwards, take some steps back, look back. Like we all have these, generationally, we have lost like so many skills of just being able to be reliant, which is why I love what you do and your Self-Reliant Festival, and why I'm so excited to be there in a couple weeks and just be around all of the people that are going to be there. So we originally just came out here to live off grid and started doing it on our own. And what we realized is that it's not enough for us to be able to do it on our own. Like if we really want to see this new earth being created that we are wanting to create for not just for ourselves, but really it's for our children and our children's children and our children's children's children and seven generations after, then it's not just enough for us to create this for ourselves. And so what we really wanted to do was provide a space where we can inspire other people and teach other people some things as well. Like we're not fully set up yet as far as all the things that we want to do. We're going to have some workshops out here where people learn how to build with natural building materials like hempcrete. We're going to have classes out here where people can come out and blacksmith and, fire up a forge and like make their own knife or make their own tool or like, do some cool stuff like that, potentially have some like gardening, permaculture stuff out here and, whatever. We're going to have some of that stuff. The butcher experience, but really the way it's connected is like we are living this way so that we can take ourselves back into the past and learn, as mid 30s, approaching 40, it's like we're scrambling trying to learn some of these things that we've lost over generations. And it's like right now, it's like we've got so many books. We have a library full of books about all the things that we need to know about growing food, preserving food, butchering animals. The first time we were ever going to butcher our own pigs, it's like we can look up on YouTube, which is a great resource, right? But what if we didn't have YouTube, right? So we went and got these hard copy books, and we're like reading the books, and we're looking at the diagrams, and we're like, all right, this is where the ribs come from, and this is where, I mean, obviously we know where ribs come from, but you know what I mean? We're looking at all the
it's different when you're like, how do I cut the ribs out without like a saw, for example?
Yeah, right, exactly. So, and then
just have a knife.
Right. Well, what's really cool about that is the knife that I'm going to use for this next harvest time is one that I made myself, which I think is so amazing. Like, right, just the fact that like the knife that I'm going to use as I cut that jugular is going to be a knife that I was able to make. And so it's really like more like going for full self-reliance. We're really not close to full self-reliance right now, but that's the goal. That is the goal to get there. And it's also the goal to bring about the new generation of children so that they aren't scrambling around in their 30s trying to learn these skills, that they're able to start having that from, our kids are 8 and 11. They were 2 and 5 the first time we ever lived off grid when we moved down to South America. They're 8 and 11 now. And I feel like they are learning really, really important things, because who knows what the future holds for them. But no matter what the future holds for them, having these types of skills that they're learning on being self-reliant is going to take them far in life, regardless of where the future goes. So, yeah.
One of the things about learning, like stepping back and learning quote unquote old skills, is we still need them. And we've gotten in, like the way modern society has developed and our food system has developed, we've been cut out of the link to nature through food. Unless we're garden hobbyists or homestead hobbyists or something, we've totally been cut out, and we don't understand how it works.
Right.
And that makes us dependent on the system working. And then when the system fails, it makes you feel viscerally afraid, even if you're never hurt by it. Like when you see that, I think during 2020, there was a point where meat was not in the store because packing plants were closed. They were killing and burying and burning thousands of pigs that should have gone through the system, through the plants, and onto the shelf. So at the same time, you have nothing on the shelf. You had the supply was there, and there was nothing in between to get it from point A to point B. And why that caused people to feel fear is they also realized when faced with an actual pig, I have no idea where to start.
Right.
I have no idea where to start. Wherein, when I saw that situation, having processed multiple pigs and having a network of people who helped me process pigs, when I saw that situation, I was like, well, that sucks. And I hope people don't go hungry, but there's a pig right there. And I know what to do if I have to do it. And it won't be as pretty as when I hire AutoFab to help me, because his cuts are much better than mine, just better placed, just like all straight. And, I'm like, man, I'm kind of a messy person, and my cuts on my pigs are a little messy too. So it's just like, I didn't have the same fear reaction. And so then the people had the fear reaction. They started panicking and doing weird, like really weird stuff that didn't help themselves at all. So I think like your ministry is a great idea, because it helps link people with confidence, whether or not they ever have to butcher a pig for survival in the future or not. Right. Or make a knife.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, like the first time that we ever had harvested our own animal, our own pigs, was during that same exact time that you're talking about. Like we had 4 pigs, we were out raising them. This before we lived on this land that we live on now. We lived in a little neighborhood. We had like 4 acres, but the neighborhood, not many people like in the neighborhood had land. So it was kind of like a neighborhood, but we happened to just have land. So we had our pigs back roaming in the forest, and we planned to take them to a butcher, but we could not find one. They were all the ones that were local and around us were all full, and they were like, no. And apparently the same thing that you were just talking about was happening. Like all these processing plants were just like not able to take anything. I don't know exactly what was going on, but we were like, oh shit, like we need to do something. And so instead of freaking out, we ordered a couple of books about how to butcher your own pig, and we started reading, and we're like, this is what we're talking about. Like this is why we need to start learning this. And so now if it never happens again, we feel completely 100% confident. I mean, I'm sure that there's other been doing it longer that have better cuts and, all the stuff. But like, at least we know we can do it. Right. And that's important to know. And every time you do it, you can get a little bit better and you can get a little bit better. And then you can take that skill that you learned and you can pass that on to someone else. So that then that's how these skills can continue getting circulated through the community instead of only having these few people that we have to rely on just in case they can't be there for us when we need them.
Yeah. And I think that's really cool. So likewise, you were, before 2020, I know this about you. You were basically living the van life, right? The RV nomad life. Nomad life's a better way to say that. So the reason you were able to be off grid in South America is you brought your home with you, right?
Well, actually, no. So we owned
okay.
Yeah, no, we owned a camper, but we moved down there and we bought we went in with another family on 5 acres and we had this tiny little cabin that we bought. So when we were traveling full time, when we were living our nomad life, we had our camper and it would be parked in the States. Whenever we were stateside, we would just kind of travel. But then what we'd do is we'd take off and we'd go off to another country for, we would go to Asia for 4 months or, we'd go do like something and then we'd come back and we'd be in our camper. So we kind of did like van life / wherever in the world life.
Yeah. / I'm out and about learning about new cultures and being exposed to different languages.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. But I think as part of that, you realized how much you don't need, right?
Yeah, totally. We learned, and we also learned how simple life really, I feel like we make everything so complicated here in the United States. Like
it's everywhere that way. It's not just the United States, but yes.
That's true. But even just like, going into like homes and stuff, like going into like a little hut, for example, that like people like legit live in these little huts and they're comfortable and they're happy and they're, and I look around and I'm like, there's nothing to this. Like when you look at like a whole big house that we have to be built, that's built by code and all the stuff that has to be done in the United States in order for it to be like this illegal structure or whatever. And we're like, why do we complicate this so much? Like literally, like it can be so simple. And so I think that we learned a lot of that when traveling, that like you could literally set yourself up with something. Like you don't need a whole lot of, again, the government gets involved. And so obviously, like depending on where you live and how you have yourself set up, you may have to still ask permission, but I'm done asking for permission to do things that I want to do. So yeah, we learned a lot in our travels about like how little you need in life and also how simple things can really be if you just get back to the basics.
Well, I noticed that your office doesn't look like a hut. It looks a lot like a tent.
Yes, my office is a tent.
So how does that work when it's cold in the winter?
Well, I have a little space heater. I keep the propane tank on the outside, but then I have a little space heater. So it actually gets pretty toasty in here when I close. So that right there is all open, obviously right now I can have that closed up and then I can get the propane. And also I just layer up, you know what I mean? It's like I'm prepared when I know when it's going to be cold. I'll come out here and I'll be prepared for the cold. I'm not a huge fan of the cold, but I'm embracing it.
I had to do that too so you may not know this, but my entire house is ripped apart right now because it turns out that all of the joists in the house are 2x4s. And if you know anything about joists, that's not structurally sound. And I mean, it worked for more than 30 years, but the floors were all not level. And that's why. So as a result of ripping everything out and redoing joists, like everything else, it's like, well, while it's open, we'll fix the wiring problem. We'll fix this problem. We'll fix the plumbing problem. And so now a third of my house is completely gutted and I can't use it. And all of the stuff that was in that third of the house is piled in front of my wood stove. So I can't use my wood stove. Because I don't want to start a fire. So actually this weekend, the Holler neighbors came over and made it so I can start my wood stove. But all last week I was like, it's just going to be cold in my house. That's just the way it's going to be. So yeah. Life Done Free says, peaceful civil disobedience. I'm not asking permission. Just go.
Yes. What's up, Tag?
Tag is in the room. Okay. So Offgrid Living. So now you are in Georgia, right?
Yep.
And how much land do you have?
26 acres. When
you got there, did it have power, water, sewage, and all that set up?
We had nothing.
Nothing.
Raw land. There was a whole bunch of cows out here that we had to kind of kick off.
Yeah. And so you just went on out there. You're like, we can survive. I can live in a tent, whatever. How did you make the decisions about so you're faced with raw land you want to be off grid. How did you like go from there to having everything covered? Because what do you have to cover first when you're off grid?
Well, I mean, I guess that could be debatable depending on where you live and like kind of what's necessary. But for us, we came out in the winter. We came out in January. No, we came out. Oh, I don't remember exactly when we came out.
Yeah.
Maybe it was November, but it was in the winter for sure. So we needed to make sure that we were going to have some heat, right? We wanted to make sure that we're not going to freeze our little butts off. Like I said, we have kids. And so if it was just me and my husband, it could be a little different if we wanted to suffer through that. But we have our kids. So we wanted heat. We wanted to have power. We wanted to have, obviously we need water. So that's like one of the biggest things is that we need water. And here where we live, we were like, one of the reasons we bought this land is because we have this huge pond, holds so much water. We have this this creek that runs through the front of our property. And when we bought the land, it had so much water flowing through it. It was like rushing, like it was beautiful. We were like, wow. And then there's a runoff creek on the side. There's a runoff creek in the back. There's actually our property is kind of sort of surrounded by water. And we were like,
have a moat.
Yeah, kind of. We do. We're actually going to be building a moat when we build our castle. So we're going to have a legit moat, but we kind of already have a moat. So we bought this because of how much water we had. So at first we were like, cool, we're just going to pull water from the creek. Like there was a lot of water. We ended up figuring out in the summer that like that creek actually, it didn't go fully dry, but it dried up a lot. And we were like, wow, wake up call for us. Like we should have been storing more water, all this stuff. But anyways, back to what we needed when we first came out. The water thing we thought we had taken care of because we were just pulling water from the creek and figuring out how to filter it really well, which we got that down. And then power. So we had some solar. We got that all set up. And then we had our camper. So we brought our camper out here and we're like, hey, we still own this camper that we traveled around the country with for years. And so we parked it and we made sure that we could, we had enough propane for heat. We had some solar run into it so we can get enough power. And then we had the water figured out. And that's really all that we needed. We had one of the first things that we did was like, let's get our orchard planted so we could get some trees out here. And then through the winter when we were staying out here, we started, working the land a bit to, get it ready for gardening and getting ready for cows and getting it ready for pigs and like all the things that we needed. But really like what ended up happening is we were living an hour away. We bought the land. So we were still living on that 4 acres that I was talking about earlier when we were raising those pigs in that neighborhood. We lived there. We bought the land and then we were coming back and forth and it was like an hour. So it was not an hour one way, and so it wasn't like this, we were like, we have to be out here. Otherwise, we're not going to get all the things done because it was like a big chore to have to go to the land. We're like, oh, we have to go out there.
Yeah, it's a drive an hour. It's not very far, but it is very far.
Right. If you want to be out there all day, it's like you got to pack food, you got to bring all the stuff and you don't have anything out here to cook with. So it's like you got to pre-cook everything, you got to have everything, it's like whatever, or bring everything raw or bring it in a cooler. But it's like a big planning. It's like you're doing the same thing every single day. It's like, so we got to the point where like, we just need to move out there. So one of the first things that we did was we put up a tent so I could work, because that was the thing is I work online and I needed to be able to have internet. So that was one thing I was like, I need internet before we move. So we needed water, power, heat, and internet.
Modern off-grid living includes internet.
Yes, exactly. It's like, but
I need you on the grid, Louise. No, go ahead. I'm sure somebody said that to you.
I know people have totally said that to me. Like, you're not off the grid. It's like, okay, well, maybe not to your definition, but we're both sitting right here online right now. So
yeah. So neither are you. Yeah. Okay. So now how long have you been there off grid?
We've owned this property for almost 2 years and we've been living out here for about 1.5 years.
Okay. So you've been 1.5 years in. What surprises came up for you in that 1.5 years that you weren't expecting about the off-grid life?
Well, I would say that knowing your land. Now, obviously, like I was saying, we had some issues with water. So we thought we were good on the water situation. Like I had this massive garden and like our property has levels. And so on the second level sits our pond. And we actually it was a broken bank when we first got here. So we're like, cool, that's perfect. We'll just put a pipe right through there. We'll gravity irrigate to the garden. We'll cover that up. We'll build the bank back up. Turns out that the pond started drying up too. So the point where the pipe was, it was under, the level of water was under the pipe. So our pond was no longer able to water our garden, which became a big problem because we had everything piped to be able to not have to water the garden. Right. And so I had to let probably half of the crop go, like tons of my tomatoes, tons of melon. Half of my garden, I had to pick and choose who I was going to keep alive. I was going through and I'm like, you look a little healthier. I'll keep you alive. And I'm like, It was kind of sad. And then also for ourselves, you know, like just water for ourselves and for our animals. Like we had cows out here too. And it was like, man, you know, there was a couple times where I actually went to our neighbor. He owns the acreage next to us. He's got like 70 plus cows. And we had to go to him and we had to say, can we borrow your hose? So and he's like this little old man. He's the sweetest little man.
It's like, whatever.
Yeah, but he's such an animal lover too. So he was like, because it's for the cows. He's like, yeah, you know. So we were going over there and we were like, you know, we got on a list to get on a well. So I didn't realize how backed up they would be, but they were 8 months behind on getting wells. We literally started looking at getting our own well drilling equipment. We're like, oh, we'll just do our own well, you know. So $35,000 later, we didn't actually buy it, but we're looking at it and we started getting on lists to get the well equipment. And then they're like, oh, our parts and stuff are backed up. So it's going to be about 8 months. And we're like, it's the same amount of time we have to wait to get our own equipment and then just wait for the well. So we went back on the well list again. And then we had all this stuff, but water was a huge thing. And so I think a part of that is just like, you know, knowing that we needed to with our land to know what was going to happen. Like we didn't know that water was going to dry up. We had so much water in here. Nobody would have thought that we would have ran out of water.
Yeah, except for all your neighbors knew you were going to run out of water.
Yes, except for that same man that let us borrow his hose. He said,
"Oh, that dries up every year."
And he also told us that we live in this weird little spot where, like, literally in the summer, I would drive, like, off my property, turn right, and like 5 minutes down the road, it's pouring rain. I'd go left, 5 minutes down the road, pouring rain. So we have this little like bubble that we live in where like it just doesn't rain in the summer. So he told us that, me and my husband, and we were like, no way. Like, we don't. So we learned,
listen to your old neighbors, guys. That's lesson number 1.
Yes, he's been here his whole life. Like, this man knows what he's talking about. There's a few other things that he told us that we didn't listen to, and we learned quickly. He told us the culvert that we put in wasn't going to be big enough, and we're like, it's going to be fine. And we already had the culvert. So my husband's like, I'm not going to go buy another one just because he said that. Like, it's going to be fine. And then sure enough, our entire bridge wiped out, 5 tons of rocks down the creek. And we're like, oh, Jackie was right again. Okay. Now
you're like, hey, Jackie, would you consult with us on this new project we're doing?
Right. I feel like I just need to bring Jackie over every time we make a decision and be like, is this a good idea or not?
Yeah. It's amazing how this tag says in all caps, you can have safety or you can have freedom, but you can't have both.
Yep. Lots of learning experiences.
And even when you have safety and you're not free, you're not safe. So the choice to me is not a hard one.
Yeah, totally.
Being safe in a cage is not safe if a fire starts and you are stuck in that cage. Yeah. The Third Eye Jedi says, I live in a spot in southern Oklahoma where the storms split. Yeah. We've had that same thing here where it's either all the rain comes here or none of the rain comes here, but just over the hill it's raining. Yeah. More than one time. Last summer it was bad. Summer we had that particularly long dry time. So
yeah, it was pretty rough.
Yeah. So I feel you on that. So that's the biggest thing is know the land. And the thing is, I think people underestimate how much the locals around them do know about their land when they move in. It's like we come in with our permaculture ideas, and those are different than what the guys are doing around us usually. And we're so confident in that. And then they still have key pieces of information we may want to build into our permaculture plan.
Right.
So definitely, I mean, when I choose what to put in my annual garden, I'll talk to the local farmers if I'm trying to, like, I've had a lot of bad luck with carrots here. Finally, I was like, what carrots are you guys growing that you're selling at the market? And they're like, oh, it's this is the only one that works and this is why. And I'm like, okay. So I went through, 8 different kinds of carrot seeds, and all I need to do was talk to the guys around the corner about what they use, rather than go into the Baker Creek catalog, get all romantic about purple colored carrots, and then realize they're not going to grow here for me. It is possible to grow them. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, totally.
So anyway, what are you building there to get out of your RV? Talk to me about that.
Yes, that's one of my favorite things to talk about. I love it. So we're actually building a castle, which is freaking going to be amazing. It's like well underway right now. So what the castle is going to be is we actually have 2 grain bins that are going to act as the turrets of the castle. And so one of them is a full-size turret that's going to have, or grain bin that's going to have 2 stories. And then the other one is actually going to be like a 3/4 of the grain bin. And it's going to be like a rooftop terrace. So we're going to have a huge retaining wall up the front, and actually the walls from one turret to the next, you're going to be able to walk across. Drawbridge, moat, like I was saying earlier, we think we're going to be able to do the moat. We're not 100% sure. We have to see how it works out, because we do have a root cellar back there, and we want to make sure that we have enough space where we don't interfere with anything that we're doing. But anyways, so the grain bin is going to be like the turrets, the two silos will be the turrets, and then the back end of the castle is going to be hempcrete. So we're building everything with a natural material that is really, really healthy. Like, it's great, sustainable material to be able to build with. And it's also really healthy for us. Like, it's mold resistant, which is massively huge in the South. Like,
yes.
So many people underestimate the fact
that,
like,
me how I know. Okay. Ripped up my whole house. Okay, go ahead.
So Nicole has been burned by this, so she knows. But yeah, like in the South, there's so many, like, there's mold issues, you guys, and like, and especially with like old houses that have just, like, I don't know, it's just it's a problem, right? So it's mold resistant, it's fire resistant. Oh, very cool. You have a friend that built a home in a silo. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so it's mold resistant, it's fire resistant, it's pest resistant. It's also it's a breathable material. So I thought it was twice in 24 hours that the air circulates through, but my husband was actually saying it's twice in an hour. So I'd have to go back and look that up, but I'm sure he knows better than I do, because he.
Hey, why would I want a breathable house, Louise?
Well, it's something that, it's the air. I mean, it's able to circulate, and it's not something like, I've actually had this question asked to me before. They're like, oh, what if it's like smoky outside? Is all the smoke going to come inside of your house? Like, it's not like breathable like that. Like, it's not breathable like if you have your windows open, then like everything's coming in. It's more like it's like a slow, I don't even know the right word for that, but it's like the air is able to circulate in and out. And so it helps with, it helps the air quality. Let's just put it that way. It helps the air quality. And it's kind of like a big, big, big filter. So like if you're, you think about our air, like what's the most important thing that we give our body? Air is number 1, water is number 2. And so it's going to help the air quality within your own home by owning hempcrete, which is going to kind of like act as like a big filter and circulate the air through the home. Fire resistant too. It's really pretty amazing that something can be fire resistant. It's going to last a really, really, really long time. And so that's one of the things is when we started looking at, so my husband studied sustainable architecture when he was back in college, and he did like a whole big thing on this, and sustainability is like a huge thing. And we are always looking for different ways to be sustainable. And when you're looking at sustainability, it's not only just about the material that you're using and what it requires to be grown or harvested or all that stuff, but it's also about like the durability of it. It's like, how long is that thing going to last? Because like through our travels, we've been to all kinds of different places, and we've seen all kinds of cool structures, and we've seen people build houses with, I think it was in, it might have been in Chile, or maybe it was in, maybe somewhere in Mexico. I don't know. It was somewhere down, I don't remember exactly where, but they're building these homes with like certain like stuff that they were harvesting from trees, but they were having to replace, or maybe it was in Costa Rica, but they were having to replace it every single year because of the fact that it would only last a season. And I was like, well, that's not really super sustainable either. If you have one building that you're going to put up that's going to last you 50 years, like that's obviously going to be more sustainable than something that you have to redo every 2 years or 5 years or 1 year, whatever, So I love the fact that hempcrete is going to last a very long time. So that's what we're doing. We're building a castle out here. And so hoping to get out of our camper. I don't exactly know how long it's going to take, because it's going to be a big, big, big project, but we are through the ministry going to be offering a workshop out here as well, where you can come and you can sign up to learn how to build with hempcrete yourself. So basically going to have people out at the property that will, it'd be like a 3-week course probably, where you're going to come and actually learn how to build with the material yourself and get your hands dirty and like help build the castle, which will be pretty epic. We're thinking that'll probably be in like October or like sometime in the fall. So anyone who is interested in learning about hempcrete and building with it, stay in touch with me, reach out to me. Our email is info@forgottenwayspma.com, and just send an email saying, hey, I'm interested in hempcrete, and we'll put you on an email list that we'll send out whenever we have the details finalized. Because I keep telling people about this workshop, but we don't even know when it's going to be, or we don't know the details. So
it's kind of like I do that too. It's like I'm going to do this fencing thing, and we still haven't done a fencing class here.
Right.
Not fencing with a sword, by the way, like stretching fence. Just for clarity's sake. We were just talking about castles, I'm just saying. So Yeah, and it's a matter of predicting the weather. I wanted to do it in the winter, but then it was like, we're going to get an ice storm if I schedule this on a weekend in January. That's what's going to happen. So
Right.
yeah, we will still get a fencing stretching thing going on, an electric fencing orientation, but I don't know when. I know when the chickens are getting processed. That's all I know.
At least you know that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, we got a question here. Are you going to Self-Reliance Festival and are you speaking?
Oh my gosh, I would love to, but I guess not on this one. Maybe Nicole will have me on a different one. I would love that.
You're kind of emceeing some things, so she will be speaking, but not about this.
Yes, so I will be happy to do the emceeing for the virtual, which Nicole and I are going to talk about that later today. But
yes.
But yeah, hopefully one of these days I'll be at the Self-Reliance Festival as a speaker. That would be amazing.
See, we have an application form you should fill out. That's how you become a speaker. Anyway, great. Okay, so what would you say if somebody is dreaming of the off-grid life? What advice would you give them about moving in that direction? What should they know before they go in?
I would say just knowing that like it's a mindset shift, and like, you know, I talk to a lot of people all the time that have this like vision and this goal and this like fantasy of like living off grid, and like it was a super big fantasy of mine too, right? But like it's so much more than like there's a lot that's going to happen out here, and it's a wonderful feeling to be able to provide for yourself and know that like there's no one else to turn to when shit goes wrong. It's like you are the one, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of challenges that come along with that as well. And so just kind of being prepared and just kind of, you know, I always tell people like go out and go explore and go somewhere where they're already doing what you want to do, and kind of go and get into some experiences. Surround yourself around people that are doing what you want to do. Surround yourself around people that are just a few steps ahead of you. So if you really want to live off grid, get yourself around people who live off grid. Get yourself around people that are doing, you know, if it's not off grid, if it's just processing chickens, and go be around Nicole who's processing her chickens, or go be around whatever, so that you can pick up those skills and like just start to, you know, like you are the sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And that's not just in person either. It's all this information that you consume on a daily basis. If you're on YouTube or on Facebook, or if you're any of your socials, like surround yourself around the people that are doing what you want to do, so you can pick up on their knowledge and their skills and get yourself around them. Go out and be, you know, find where they are. What do they need help with? Can you go and can you volunteer your time to go out and say, hey, you know, one of the best things that we did when we traveled is we went to lots and lots of different off-grid places, and we would set up there as a homestay family. We would like be, you know, living with them for like a few weeks to a month or something. And we'd be like, hey, how can we help? And then as we're contributing to them, we're learning so much about like what it takes to live off grid.
Yeah.
And yeah, like there's just so much to it that like it's not it's amazing, but it's definitely not like a fantasy world, you know, because I feel like the era that we live in right now, like a lot of times I'm always like, oh, I feel like I belong in a different era, you know, I feel like, you know, living back in the way, you know, forgotten ways of the past, you know. And it's like when I think back onto the way that they used to live too, like that was really hard. That was really hard.
Yeah.
It might have been simple, but it was really hard. And so we just get to, one of the things I love about it is what Nicole said earlier, kind of like modern, you know, like modern, you know, we have like some modern conveniences like the internet, and we have modern conveniences like an Instant Pot, or, you know, like certain things that we can use that like they just didn't have that type of stuff back then, you know. So but trying to maybe get familiar too with what you don't necessarily have to go without if you're going to live off grid. That's one thing, you know. It's like Tag, who's probably, I don't know if he's still on right now, but you know, they have a 5,000 square foot home, and they have a huge solar system where they're set up. They could run probably, you know, mostly whatever they wanted to run. So you don't necessarily have to go without if you want to be off grid, but it's not a bad idea to also consider how much you're consuming. Do a power audit, do a water audit. You know, how much are you using, and how much of that are you wasting? Like how much of that do you not need to use? Because for us, one of the first things was to figure out like how much power are we going to need? How much power do we need to run?
That's really hard to figure out, having just gone through that here.
Yeah, it's
how much do I need versus how much am I using right now? 2 different things.
Exactly. So how much do you need, and how much of that is kind of sort of a waste. And it's the same thing when it comes to water too, you know, like, I mean, we fill up 55 gallons of water at a time. Most people go through 55 gallons of water in a day without even thinking about it, you know. We have to make that water last, you know. It's like we're still on our waiting list for the well because we got off of it a couple times and back on it. So we're like, right now we have tons of water out here and we're super grateful for it. But who knows if we didn't, whenever we don't have it. So it's like being able to just appreciate every single bit of resources that you have, appreciate the water, appreciate your power, appreciate it for what it is, and don't take advantage of it. And then also, just get into the mindset of consuming less. So even if you build yourself a big, nice power bank, even if you have a 5,000 square foot home, just knowing that you can live with less it's going to help you in life, like regardless, because it's going to be a mindset shift for sure.
That's why I recommend people go camping or backpacking, which they may not be super comfortable the whole time. But when you've spent a few days out with a backpack on, boiling water with your tiny little stove, and you go through your first rainstorm and you're fine, it puts in perspective all of these fears of losing the house because we lost a job, which is a very real fear for people too, right? And it's like, well, actually, I hope I don't lose my house, but I don't have to have this house. I don't have to have this much. I can actually, you break it down to the basics of what you need, and it's a lot lower. It's interesting. So Tag, who was in here, I don't know if he's still here, he was really stressing the other thing about off-grid living, which is when you need to fix something, you don't get to call a guy. Why don't we have water? I guess we better go figure that out. Why are the batteries not charging? I guess we got to go figure it out. I think that's why it can feel like a lot of things to learn, because at the end of the day, when you go off grid, the thing you have to get really comfortable with is that you are now, it's possible to hire people to help you with these things, but you are basically responsible for keeping things going. And you don't get to call a guy and have him come out there and instantly understand how your solar interacts with your well pump.
Right.
Which it's a very simple thing to say. It's a lot less simple than what I just said. Like, I said it very fast, but how our solar here is going to interact with my well pump requires multiple things in between the sun hitting a panel and my well pump getting water up to my house. And in that whole system, you have to know electrical, you have to know 12-volt wiring, you have to know how water moves through pipes, and well pumps are there. It's a device you have to learn, like all of these different things between the sun hitting a panel and water coming out of the faucet. And so then when water doesn't come out, like, is it a clogged filter? Did somebody actually, I don't know, dig down and bust a pipe? Or is it something with the actual system itself? Who knows?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a really great point to bring up too, because I'm so grateful for my husband, because there's a lot of stuff that I don't know about some of that stuff, and that I have him out here too. And it's really, really, really helpful to know that, like, understanding from start to finish what the process is. Because if you don't understand the full process of how the water goes from the ground into your house, then if something does go wrong, how are you going to be able to know how to fix that? Especially if, let's say, you don't have internet. Let's say you don't have, anything else that you can really rely on at that point. Only thing that you can rely on is what's in here. And if you have to Google something, guys, it's not in here. That means you don't know it. So not that there's anything wrong with Googling something, but like, if you have to Google it, the knowledge is not yours. You don't own that knowledge in your mind. You don't know it. So having to understand how things work is a huge part of living off grid. Yeah. Because who are you going to call when something goes,
my water systems went through a major upgrade in the last 3 years. And I have been the person who understands how my well works. Like, it's really a spring, but I'm calling it a well. There's no digging involved. But I have understood how it worked the whole time, after I spent the first 6 months of my life having problems and learning how wells work, or how that whole system works. And Tactical and Nighthawk did most of the work on the upgrade this time. And my one caveat was, yes, I will let you do that, but at every step, I need to see what's going on, and I need to know how to fix it, because ultimately, if you're not here and it breaks, I still have to make it work again. So
that's a good point.
I'm willing to let you do the work, but I got to understand how it works. And so that's where we are today.
Right. And I love that, bringing that up too, is like the community, like I love when we listen to Tag speak at Next Steps conference and how it's so important to have community too. And like, being able to have people that can come and teach you that. Cause it's like, I'm the same way. Like my husband will go out and do something and I'm like, I need to watch you and I need to learn. And a lot of times I have to like actually physically do it myself because watching is not enough for me. Like everybody learns differently, but it's like watching it is not enough. I have to like physically do it myself. I'm like, let me do it, because if I don't, then I won't learn. And what's going to happen if he goes off somewhere and I have to go do that myself? And I've got my 2 little girls here and, like we're teaching them too, so I swear my youngest daughter, she's 8. She could teach me more about living off grid than I could. Like she like legit is like probably a bigger contributor on our property than even I am. And I think it's amazing because she has this desire, like you could see it in her eyes. Like whenever her daddy is doing something or when I'm doing something, she's just like, she wants to help and she wants to learn. Sometimes I'm like, yo, Stella, how do I do this again? And she'll be like, oh, no problem, Mom. And she'll teach me. And I'm like, wow. Right. But yeah, I love the fact that, it's great to have community around you. And just that's why it's so important to know your people, know your neighborhood, know your neighbors, get on the freesteading.com and figure out where all your people are so that you can have people that are there that can help you learn, teach you, do it for you maybe the first time or two, but like as they're helping you, like you're learning it from them so that you actually end up having that skill too.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Well, we've been on about an hour. So if people want to, and I want to have you on again on another topic, I'm sure, but if people want to get a hold of you, how do they reach Louise? How do they get involved with you? Do you have any, I don't know, like really cool webinars coming up or anything you want to promote?
Well, I have, I still don't have my website up and running. So we're just, it's a hot mess over here. It's like this low down the priority list with the spring coming up. So our website will be running soon, forgottenwayspma.com, but our email address is there, info@forgottenwayspma.com. If anyone wants to get on our email list, just send me an email and say, hey, I'm interested in hempcrete. I'm interested in the butcher experience. I'm interested in whatever part you're interested in. I'm still on the commie platforms, Facebook. Find me as Louise Milleman, Instagram, Forgotten Ways PMA. And then I don't really have any webinars coming up about any of this stuff. I have like a business webinar coming up tonight about the legacy business model, which helps. It's an online business experience while promoting health and wellness products. But what we do is we're able to create a really abundant income online. So we are able to live the life that we live. So you guys, I talked about living off, or like one of the things is I need to have internet because I do work online. So I have a webinar coming up tonight at 7 p.m. It's called the legacy business model. So if anyone's ever interested in that, then of course you can just reach out to me on any of those ways, Facebook, Instagram, or email. And then I can plug you guys in with that. But that's pretty much it. And then of course I'll be at the Self-Reliance Festival and so excited about that. So I'll be there and I don't exactly know how much time in between emceeing, but I would love to interact with people. So if anyone,
you'll have time to interact, but yes.
Okay, good. So yeah, come
Saturday, you're going to be pretty busy.
Okay.
Sunday you will be less busy.
Okay, good to know.
That's
but
the way that always goes. Like the first half of Saturday, all of us are like,
yeah, probably running around like crazy people, but it'll be
well, it's just, like which thing is going to break that morning because something always does and we don't know what it is, but then we have to fix it right away. So
right.
It's just part of running events. We know that happens. So
it's inevitable.
Anyway, well, thank you so much for being on today's show.
Yes, thank you for having me. It was fun.
All right.